As long as there are sovereign nations possessing great power, war is inevitable. Albert Einstein. The genius Albert Einstein, known for unlocking the mysteries of the universe, also had deep insights into the affairs of nations and mankind. When he declared, "As long as there are sovereign nations possessing great power, war is inevitable," he wasn't just being cynical, he was being painfully realistic. This statement rings true across history and in our modern world, because whenever absolute power collides with national interest, pride, and fear, conflict becomes almost inevitable. Let's explore this idea through stories, real examples, and some explanation to understand why power, sovereignty, and war are often tangled together. 1. The Tale of Two Brothers, India and Pakistan. Imagine two brothers who were once part of the same household. One day, they divide their father's estate and go their separate ways. Both believe they are the rightful heir to certain lands. Now, imagine both become rich and powerful, with armies and nuclear weapons at the disposal. This is the ongoing story of India and Pakistan since their partition in 1947. These two sovereign nations, both equipped with military might and political pride, have fought several wars: 1947, 1965, 1971, and the Kargil conflict in 1999, mainly over Kashmir, a disputed region both claim. Even today, tensions run high. Each time diplomacy calms the waves, something triggers another ripple of aggression. Because they are sovereign and powerful, neither side wants to appear weak. Einstein's words fit here like a glove. The very existence of sovereign power combined with old wounds and pride make peace fragile and war always lurking. 2. The cold shoulder that could freeze the world. US and Russia. Let's talk about the United States and Russia, two global giants with different ideologies, vast armies, and egos the size of continents. During the Cold War, from the late 1940s to the early 1990s, they never officially went to war with each other, but the world lived in constant fear of nuclear annihilation. Instead of battles on home soil, they played dangerous games abroad: Vietnam, Afghanistan, Cuba, and more. Even today, tensions remain. In 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, and the West, especially the US, responded with sanctions, military aid to Ukraine, and economic isolation. This isn't a direct war between America and Russia, but it's a proxy war, a common product of powerful sovereign nations refusing to back down. The problem: each side wants to protect its interests, influence, and image. Sovereignty gives them that freedom, and power gives them the tools. Mix those with fear and pride, and war becomes inevitable. The African experience: Rwanda, Sudan, and the legacy of colonial borders. Let's zoom into Africa, a continent that suffered from artificial borders drawn by colonial powers, lumping together ethnic groups that had no business being in the same nation. When these countries gained independence, they became sovereign, but with unresolved ethnic and political tensions. Rwanda in 1994 is a tragic case. The genocide that killed nearly 800,000 people in just 100 days wasn't just an internal civil war. It was fueled by a government with power, by leaders who exploited ethnic identity, and by sovereign boundaries that ignored history. In Sudan, similar power struggles led to the South Sudanese secession in 2011, followed by civil war in the new nation. These are not wars between global superpowers but among sovereign nations where leadership held power and used it for personal, tribal, or ideological agendas. Power and sovereignty don't only cause global wars, They also lead to internal wars when leaders weaponize division and pride. 4. A modern metaphor. The corporate giants. Now, think of powerful sovereign nations as mega-corporations. Imagine Apple and Samsung going to court over patents. They won't shoot missiles at each other, but they will spend billions protecting their image, market, and power. Countries do the same, just with tanks instead of lawyers. In 2020, the US banned Huawei, accusing the Chinese tech firm of espionage. China responded by pushing for technological self-reliance and strengthening its digital walls. It's not a traditional war, but it's a form of Cold War, where two sovereign powers use their influence to challenge and contain one another. These are modern forms of conflict, but at their core, the issue is the same: sovereignty plus power equals friction. 5. The neighborhood story. Nigeria and Boko Haram. Let's bring it even closer to home. Imagine a neighborhood where a local gang rises and begins to terrorize families. The local government has the weapons, the law, and the resources, but also the pride of sovereignty. It refuses foreign help, saying, "We can handle this." That's Nigeria's battle with Boko Haram. Despite international offers of assistance, Nigeria's government was slow to accept help, citing sovereignty. Meanwhile, thousands died, millions were displaced, and the conflict dragged on. Here, sovereignty and power led to inaction, then overreaction, both of which allowed war to thrive. Theoretical explanation. Why sovereignty plus power equals conflict. Sovereignty gives nations the right to govern without interference. Power gives them the ability to act. But nations are run by humans. Flawed, emotional, fearful, and proud. When resources are scarce, borders are unclear, or ideologies clash, sovereign nations often act in their own interest. This creates a world without a referee. Unlike individuals who answer to law enforcement, sovereign nations answer to no one. The United Nations exists, but it has no real power over its most powerful members. When the US invaded Iraq in 2003 without UN approval, it faced no consequences. Why? Because power defies accountability. War, therefore, becomes not a question of if, but when. 6. Hope and caution. The European Union model. Yet, not all is doom and gloom. Europe learned a painful lesson from 2 world wars. In response, they created the European Union, a bloc of countries that share some sovereignty in exchange for peace and cooperation. Germany and France, once bitter enemies, now trade more than they fight. While disagreements still exist, their economic interdependence reduces the chances of war. This shows that when nations surrender a bit of sovereignty for collective power and shared rules, peace can hold. But this model is hard to replicate globally, especially among nations with different cultures, histories, or ambitions. Answer: Einstein's warning remains relevant. Conclusion: the cost of power and pride. Albert Einstein didn't make his statement as a pessimist. He made it as a realist who had seen 2 world wars and watched nations arm themselves with atomic bombs. His quote isn't just a prediction, it's a warning. From superpower standoffs and regional rivalries to civil wars and ideological battles, the pattern is the same: sovereign nations, when armed with power and driven by fear or pride, will eventually clash. Until the world finds a way to balance sovereignty with shared responsibility, war, sadly, will remain inevitable.